2:30 a.m. this morning. This is the future state of the motion picture industry.
$50-50 by 2020 to get women to get the bigger budgets as well.
It's very important that we put the stories in the hands of the people who own those stories.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm the Artistic Director and Co-Head of TIFF.
I'm Joanna Vicente, Executive Director and Co-Head of TIFF. We're thrilled to welcome you to the opening day of the 2019 TIFF Industry Conference.
To begin, we'd like to acknowledge that this sacred land where we gather today has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. A little history: this territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes today. The meeting place of Toronto is the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work in this community.
We would like to acknowledge our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oréal Paris, and Visa, and our major public supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto. We would like to acknowledge our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada. We appreciate their continued support of our festival initiatives each year. Our opening Mogul session today is generously supported by Pinewood. And we, of course, thank our generous donors and members for supporting TIFF's mission, the way people see the... Sorry.
It's okay. We have to say this over and over again sometimes, so, easy to trip out.
Transform the way the world... Sorry, I'm like messing this up.
It's okay to transform the way people see the world through film. It's hard to say over and over again fast, especially. Over 5,000 creators and decision makers from 80 countries will make Toronto their home over these 11 days of the festival, and creating a productive, welcoming, and inspiring space for these professionals is our industry team, who've been working tirelessly to deliver business resources, inspiring development opportunities, and relevant programming. The Hyatt Regency will once again play host to our industry center, the hub of our business activity throughout the festival, and our Filmmakers Lab and Rising Stars participants are currently taking part in creative labs that will further their careers and spark creativity. And right here in this beautiful and historic Glenn Gould's studio, we have our 5-day industry conference bringing together the global community of media, business practitioners, and creators.
The conference presents a robust program encompassing several key areas: creative development, business acceleration, and advocacy for equality across the media industries. Over the next 5 days, 150 international guest speakers will champion enterprise, innovation, and creativity. We'll examine the impact of global events on our industry, including climate change, immigration and storytelling, big tech, and truth in the era of propaganda. The sessions will be introduced by our industry conference programming team, led by TIFF's new Director of Industry, Jeff McNaughton. They are conference producer Karina Rottenstein, doc conference programmer Danae Peters, and Kinza Hamed, Jana Alexopoulos, Mike Ortega, and Shafali Bahal. We look forward to seeing you all at the conference and wish you a successful festival experience.
And we're honored this morning to open the conference with two American trailblazers, Academy Award-winning producer and New York Times best-selling author, Brian Grazer, and Academy Award-winning director, Ron Howard. They're in the house. Each individually accomplished. Together, they are a real force. Brian Grazer and Ron Howard have contributed some of the most influential stories of our time, including A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, and Frost Nixon, igniting the imaginations of generations of audiences and storytellers alike. This year they have 2 films in official selection at the festival. Our opening night film, which we premiered last night, Once Were Brothers, Robbie Robertson and the Band, which they executive produced, and Dads, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, which they produced, and I have a special interest in Dads.
In 1986, Brian and Ron co-founded Imagine Entertainment to create and cultivate important stories and storytellers across film, television, and documentary. As the industry evolved, so has their company. They've expanded their umbrella to companies including Imagine Documentaries, Imagine Kids+Family, and the industry-changing Imagine Impact. Their decades-long partnership has stood the test of time. They strike the perfect balance of creative excellence and business intelligence. They really love what they do.
Guiding us through this conversation is Dawn Chmielewski. She's a journalist with 30 years' experience spent covering business, entertainment, and technology, and she is a senior editor at Forbes magazine.
Before we get started, let's take a look at the body of work from these moguls. Please join us in welcoming to the stage Dawn Chmielewski, Brian Grazer, and Ron Howard.
You guys.
So before we get started, who edited that great reel?
It was actually a reel that was made for me to sell books. Because I have a new book coming out. But then we chopped it up, and it does share a lot of our body of work.
Yeah, that was fabulous. So I was hoping that we could start with our conversation talking about kind of the sweeping changes that are taking place in Hollywood and broadly in the entertainment industry. It's a period of consolidation. It's a period where old business models are being thrown on their heads. You know, Netflix and Amazon are really remaking the world of television. Talk to me about this transformation that's taking place and how you began to prepare for it.
Well, I mean, I really want to start with this sort of general thought or thought and fact that as we've done this for at least 3 decades, we've seen so many different changes happen from, you know, cassette disc. I mean, everything is, hardware and distribution is always changing. And it's always in the state of evolution. Sometimes it's constructive and sometimes it's deconstructive. But that stuff changes. But the valuable thing, I mean, to the audience and to us, quite frankly, is that our value is to create stories. So stories have always been valuable. So IP itself has always been valuable. And there is some beauty in this new distribution model in that it enables us to have a wider palette of storytelling possibilities of different sizes and shapes and time lengths and everything else. And so we have built a company that is now constructed to accommodate all these different sizes and shapes for all the different distribution systems, meaning whether it's a theatrical distribution, which could be Warner Brothers. Well, that's all changing. It's all in flux.
Definitely Warner Brothers.
Well, also because you can, I might say Warner Brothers, and then tomorrow they'll say, well, they're only streaming and they're not doing theatrical distribution. But probably what's happening is, and we were with Marty Scorsese last night on the Robbie Robertson film, and often, say for example, Netflix, which is a streamer, if they choose to do it, send it out into the world theatrically, it could be 3 to 4 weeks out in the world through theaters and then go right to streaming, which I think is a pretty great model. So anyway, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that classic stories, good stories, original stories are always going to have high value. And it's just a function of how you leverage yourselves to be the beneficiary of the high value.
Right.
And I just would say this reminds me of early in the life of the partnership. I mean, well, of the company. Of course, we started working together in like 79 or 80, developing Night Shift, and then we did Splash, and then we produced things separately, but then we came together in the mid-80s and we launched Imagine. And I remember we were at an Allen and Company conference early in the life of our company, and there was this panel, so this was somewhere in 86, 87, lots of talk about disruption, but had nothing to do with digital, had everything to do with these other formats. And I remember Brian and I listening to this esteemed panel. I remember Barry Diller was on it. I mean, it was,
We were intimidated.
It was intimidating. But we looked at each other afterwards, and I said, were you thinking what I'm thinking? And we said, yeah, aren't we glad we're the storytellers?
Yeah.
Because they have to figure out, sort of where to play it and how to monetize it, and our job is to make great stuff. Now, that's always been the dream, and we've always had a pretty broad aesthetic sensibility and appetite for lots of different kinds of stories.
Right.
Our business models and partners didn't always sort of embrace the breadth of the kinds of projects we wanted to do. Let's just say we had to sneak around in order to make a documentary, kind of pretend we weren't involved or something.
Otherwise, someone would sue us.
Yeah. Our TV executives were not allowed to talk to our movie executives. There was no synergy. It's the opposite of it, which we always wanted in our company, was this notion that the idea was king. Story is king. Find the right outlet. Well, now there are all these other outlets that Brian's talking about, and that's why it makes it very exciting. And we've retooled the company so that now we don't have those limitations, and it's really liberating and exciting.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you took a really bold step. You broke with your distributor of 30 years, Universal, and began to raise money on your own to begin to partly finance some of these projects. So talk about that moment of decision and how it has perhaps freed you to pursue all of your varied interests.
Well, I think we saw this coming, and we start talking about impact. We'll talk about how seeing that coming intersects with the consolidation of these companies right now. But I think we saw that it's almost always been that bureaucratic systems have slowed down the spontaneity of creativity. And creativity is best nurtured when you're able to be spontaneous, when you're able to think, collaborate, get reaction, and move up that ladder, whatever that means. But currently, the slog, within bureaucratic systems has become a malignancy, and it slows down your project in movies or television so much.
I mean, it's called development hell for a reason.
Because it is hell. No, it's not really hell, sorry. So in any event, we did think that we saw the acceleration of this sort of slog and slowdown in terms of being able to have your idea, have it actualized or materialized very quickly, and turn into a movie or television show or documentary. So we thought, okay, I think we've had a great run with Universal. We really liked that run of whatever 27 years, and we'll continue to make movies for them. But we want to develop these movies ourselves with our own money. So that was our idea. It's a very simple idea, but we're pretty good at having ideas, developing ideas that can materialize and become Friday Night Lights, or can become a beautiful, these kinds of things. But you do need money to develop them. And so we thought we want to be the people that do that. We want to be the people to the creative community to say, if you have an idea, we don't want to slow you down. We want to help you speed your system up. Tell us the idea. We will tell you very quickly whether it's something that we can relate to, whether it sort of fits it within the template of what, our taste.
And exciting.
And if we, like just recently, Lin-Manuel, thank God, this was great. Lin-Manuel, who's gigantically talented, he wanted to direct a movie. He started out in film, and then he transitioned into Broadway musicals. And then, of course, Hamilton was a crowning jewel. But he, there's someone in our company named, I'm going to even go back further, I'm sorry. We had a vertical power structure at Imagine. We had a chairman, a president, a thing. There was a young girl, she was 28 years old, that was a superstar. We could see it. Her name is Julio. Very smart girl, Julio. And I said, keep Julio, everybody. And they said, oh, well, her contract's up. I go, you've got to be kidding. How could her contract be up? I mean, you're supposed to, let's get ahead of that. So Ron and I together said, we have to change this vertical power system and be more modern and make it a horizontal. And the horizontal power structure means we have one person that's like chairman of, runs Imagine Films.
Right.
That person has a couple other people, but we just now bet on people. So I said, Julio, you don't have to sit underneath 5 people. You can talk to Ron and I directly. We will say yes or no to you directly. We will pay for your life. In other words, we'll subsidize you. We'll give you an office and an environment, and you just stay here. And that made her super happy to have that level of... Because now she has independence, she has guys like us to support her, and financial backing. So she doesn't need to sit on top of a mini infrastructure that's going to go later to a larger infrastructure.
Yeah, no one loves bureaucracy.
So we're trying to take away these infrastructures and empower creative people that are passionate, sustainable passion, real passion. And what I mean by, you guys all know what that means. It means when we had our very first movie, Splash, that took 5 years of people saying no to us. And you have to be able to just look at no as a temporary point of view.
And the other thing is, so talking about, it's easy to say development hell and complain about executives or bureaucracies or so forth, but as these dynamics change, there's something that's very understandable that's gone on, which is it's ever more competitive, which is a little bit sort of unexpected in a way. You'd think as everything broadens out, it's easier to get things done. But in fact, each company is a brand, and they're trying to guard that very carefully and very methodically. And so that's partly what leads to this sort of quagmire, this slow process. What we've discovered is that that's not always the case. When you find the right, exciting partner, and we do partner. We don't pay for the project. We still need to go and find the company. But when you find the company with the need...
We co-finance television.
Yes, we do, yeah. When we, and other projects to a degree. But largely, we're looking for partners. And we're looking to those companies. But when you find the right idea that's advanced to the point where you really can understand what it is, and you can take it to a market. Right. Suddenly you find the partner that is most excited, that understands the project the best, and now it's not some adversarial thing, it's all hands on deck, let's get it done. That's a very different dynamic, better for the creatives and better for the project, and more importantly, better for innovation.
Talk to me about give me one example.
I'm going to give you the Lin-Manuel example.
Go for it. Yeah.
Does that
that's
fit
perfect.
within it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Julio, the girl that I was referring to, that's a young producer that works with us and is passionate, she says, I want to do a movie based on a Jonathan Larson play called Tick, Tick, Boom. I said, all right, what is Tick, Tick, Boom? And she tells me what Tick, Tick, Boom is. Jonathan Larson also wrote Rent, which was massive. But I said, basically, you always have to build your case. So I say, case build this for me. She case built it, but not to my satisfaction. So I said, well, make it a better case, like improve it. So she said, what does that mean? I said, add creative leverage to make it more valuable, to widen the breadth of potentially the audience of it. So I don't know what she's going to do. All I know is I tell her, build a better case, and give her some hints. She comes back with Lin-Manuel. I mean, that was like it was beyond case building.
It turned out he had performed Tick, Tick, Boom. He was passionate about Larson, and he wanted to make a movie. He wanted some support, some experience behind him, and in his own way, he's a very humble guy. He doesn't need very much support. Right. We know that. It makes that an easier yes. So again, this energy picked up momentum.
But what was attractive, let me slice this little nuance in. What was attractive to Lin-Manuel, who's also very smart, is all the ingredients. Ron and I are, that's valuable. We have a body of work. We've had trial and error. That's valuable. But we also, because we broke away from the studio system and created this independent model, we had money to pay for the early stages of the development, the location scout, the script, the underlying rights, the Jonathan Larson estate, and it's not high, it was a meaningful amount of money that somebody wouldn't want to take out of their pocket, but we could. And so that, all of a sudden, now we have a script, a star, Andrew Garfield, we have Lin-Manuel, and we go out to the market, and let's say we ask then what we do is, like television, which is really, I love this in TV, where you have a project, an idea. We did this exact same thing, so I'll keep it on the same narrative. Lin-Manuel and Julio and a few others, we get in a van, and a driver drives us to Amazon, Netflix, Universal, Warner Brothers, a couple other people that are super excited because we wanted to make sure we don't want to just meet to say hello and say, hey, I'd love you to meet Lin-Manuel. People like to meet Lin-Manuel. But we wanted serious buyers. So there were many of them. So we did 2 days in a Mercedes van. I don't know why I had to say that, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like the movie Bowfinger that you love, where we're like in, broken windows in a van, like painters.
It was comfortable.
Yeah. And we really wanted $25 million to make this movie. By the end of this 3-day, we did the 2 days in the van, then we started to collect offers. 25 became 50. That isn't what we asked for, but we got really in it, but it was a win-win for everybody. It's a win for us. It enriches what's going to be the film. It enriches our compensation system, which is something we all want to do. And it was great for Netflix because Netflix really, really, really wanted it. Other people wanted it too, but we were, as Ron was saying, we were able to ascertain, not just by the check, but by the enthusiasm of the team that were in the room, that it was going to be really an important purchase for them, an important project. So that's an example of how to build a movie. If you have a good idea, or ultimately you have to have creative leverage.
Yeah. Ron, Ron, you also have a project that you're wrapping up for Netflix, Hillbilly Elegy, which is just a fabulous book, memoir. Yeah. Talk to me about what it feels like taking, you're used to theatrical exhibition, and now you're going to a streamer. What was that decision like? Were you worried about people seeing your film? Talk to me about this.
No, I feel like more people are going to see the film, particularly the nature of this film, which is a character-driven, story. It's great performance opportunities, but not a tentpole kind of a movie.
There's no one with a cape.
Similarly, there was quite a bit of interest in hillbilly elegy,
Right.
but we were able to go, and I was able to talk to J.D. Vance, and we didn't even have to, we didn't make the competitive bid. I mean, we put money out there, but it had more to do with sort of our passion and the fact and the promise that we were going to develop it internally and then find the right home. And so we actually made that strategy part of our plan, and it was even part of the conversation with JD. We then were able to recruit Vanessa Taylor to write it. We worked on it for a long time internally till it had reached this point. And geez, we didn't have a Mercedes van. We just all got there. But we but we went around. Karen Lunder, who is the woman who runs our movies, was running point on this. And we were, you know, again, found the right home. There was a great deal of enthusiasm, but in this case, Netflix again was the company that seemed to have the need, and we also felt had the right marketing strategy, point of view, reason to make it. Right. And I felt like that with a difficult subject matter that's dark and difficult and tough in places, very emotional in places as well, but with themes that I did want to share, otherwise I wouldn't be telling this story, that I feel like that there's a chance that more people will see it faster, and it would be more water cooler discussion around the title than if we rolled it out in a typical theatrical pattern, especially given the current climate.
I mean, I know you both have collected, you know, so much hardware that perhaps that's not as meaningful as perhaps someone trying to break in.
Oh, no.
Worried about. But will you get a limited theatrical release for this? So it will be eligible?
Yes,
awards eligible?
that's the plan, yeah.
All right, sounds good.
I mean, we do look, just to put, I mean, there are some movies that really are best suited, I mean, can be best optimized by a conventional theatrical exhibition. You know, I mean, Disney kills it. I mean, they have, well, I think they control like 50% of the market.
Pretty close, 40%.
But they have huge, you know, theatrical, they have huge numbers on Black Panther and all the films that they make, and then then it'll find its way through their, you know, their infrastructure.
But that's what's, again, interesting, is that there are movies, and it's not only superhero movies or giant IP movies that belong in theaters. There are other movies that have that chance to sort of find that audience. That really is the best
big family
approach.
Films, which we're making a couple of them.
So again, it's the time to find the right partner. It's not always one thing or the other, and this is what we're trying to do, is preserve as much autonomy. And I want to make sure we get to talk about impact, because with impact, it's both a creative approach, but it's also really about taking what we've learned over the last few years about this sort of generating IP content on its own, and then creating a marketplace for it, and we're trying to share that.
Yeah, so let's talk about we'll go right there, and then we'll come back and talk about some of your documentary work, which I find fascinating, and your work in family. But what is the premise of Imagine Impact, and what is the problem you're seeking to, or the void that you're seeking to address at a time when there's so much consolidation happening?
Well, it started with Brian and Y Combinator, really, in terms of this particular approach, which is really inspired.
Yep.
Okay, so in Silicon Valley, we know about there's endless amount of startups. Okay, so there are people that want to improve their odds on VCs that want to improve their odds on successful startups. One of them was this. The sort of premier company is called Y Combinator. You probably know about it. And Y Combinator is a startup accelerator, and what it does is it accepts applications from people all over the world that have startup ideas, and you know, and have a supporting data. You know, there's certain conditions in which they'll accept your application. Then it goes through this application process to get to a place where you can be in their boot camp, where they'd have maybe 200 people that have startups that have gotten through hundreds of thousands, and the couple hundred people get into this startup accelerator, where it's called the boot camp. And then they have these great mentors that are teaching the startup people that have the startup ideas like Airbnb, they nurture like a boot camp their skills so they can make Airbnb faster and better.
And get it financed.
And get it financed. Right. And then they have a thing called Demo Day, where an audience like this will show up and all the VCs will come and they'll bid on whether they or not bid on the project. So I thought of a couple things. I thought one was, given this consolidation, you know, AT&T purchasing Warner Brothers, Disney purchasing Fox, just this kind of consolidation, that their competitive nature, they will want content, good content, more, and they'll pay more because they're really competitive with each other, all of them. And so therefore the need for great content, branded content, is going to be, in high demand. Now, there's only, one Ryan Murphy or one J.J. Abrams, but they think there's thousands of them. But but really they just break it down and they say, get Ryan Murphy or get J.J. Abrams or get, Greg Berlanti or something, and then but there's only 10. So we started so long ago. Ron was a superstar kid actor, but but he wasn't a superstar director, and he wasn't an Oscar-winning director. He was, oddly enough, he was he was an underdog, in that he was sort of branded for this. He was famous and kind of but that's that. I was scrambling and struggling, and we just know that there are fresh voices out there because we were those voices. We also had the privilege of being able to give Aaron Sorkin his first show, which was Sports Night. He went on to become massively successful in one of those big brands, as did J.J. Abrams with Felicity for us. And so we know in the world those voices exist, but they have no way to get to Hollywood. Hollywood is the most opaque business microcosm probably in the world. It is so confusing. It's the most impossible place to navigate. It
Telling
is.
this audience.
It's impossible. And so we thought, why don't we create a company that's called Impact, because we think content, we called it Impact because optimally for us, we think stories are maps to impact, emotional impact. That's how we see it. And so we call it Impact, and it's a exact same thing. We dropped an Instagram a long time, it was like a year ago, called Impact One, and we had 57 countries around the world. People from them applied to Impact. Mm-hmm. So anyone in this room could apply to Impact. If you get through this obstacle course and you get into either into the large culture of the applications or into the boot camp, right. You will have mentors like Oscar-winning writers like Lance Black, or Emmy-winning television writers if you're doing a TV show, mentoring you, 1 per 4 students. We call them creators. At the end of the 8 weeks, these creators have to finish the thing that they started. They must make the thing that they got in there for. And
and meanwhile, they're paid as they go.
Yeah, we pay.
Right.
Good. Wow. Good.
Right.
We pay them so that they, meaningfully for room and board and get hotels and whatever they have to get, or because this one kid got in. He had $12 in his life. He was a kid from Zimbabwe, a tribe, literally a tribe in Zimbabwe, and he got into the boot camp. Godwin. Godwin gets into the boot camp. He writes with the help of one of his mentors, and by listening to our great speakers, because we got JJ and we got Judd Apatow, we have all these great speakers come in. He assimilated all that information, finished his animated movie that was actually built out of his life in a tribe in Zimbabwe. 4 studios bid on it. He sold it to Netflix for, I think, $400,000 or $350,000. So now he has $400,000 plus $12.
And he got engaged.
Well, because we gave him, yeah.
What did you give him?
Well, no, because his weekly stipend was enough to get him engaged, and he got a wedding ring, and that was kind of beautiful. It was kind of also sort of funny on his way to America at LAX, they lost his luggage. But I mean, these are real stories. We had this fantastic story, a girl in India whose parents, possibly, rightly wanted her to take on, the Indian, her culture. And her culture is relatively strict. And so she decided that she was going to be the best liar there is. And she became like so ingenious. I mean, she was the talented Mr. Ripley. I mean, she was this person, she's this girl. So she writes a half-hour television show, and that gets bought because she was so cunning and entertaining. And so on the day of her, instead of calling it demo day, we call it pitch day. And our room now fills up like this. It's amazing. In fact, we even have standing room because I think we have 270 buyers want to get in the room to see if they can buy the project.
It's all about leverage, what you were saying.
So it's all about leverage. So they have to compete we create a market. So they all have to compete with one another in a blind bid to try to get, and we have an app called Impact. You can just get the app. If you can't make it to pitch day, you get on the app, you can press it, you can read it, and then you compete that way. But it's really a democratized system. So all these people, whether they're Indian or whether they're Spanish, wherever they are in the world, Canadian, American, they get to, they get on this app, and if they have a project, they can put it in there on the app, and buyers will see this. And so it kind of works for everybody. It's a win-win because there are more than 10 people that qualify to write good television shows or movies. And we know it because we've seen it. The three amigos, these master directors from Mexico, they're all from different parts of Mexico. I mean, it was hard for them to get to America and get their stories told.
Right. Now we're in Impact 3. And what's interesting is that projects, of course, from Impact 1, which is not so long ago, are continuing to evolve and be set up. And so there's this kind of flow and this momentum that's starting to pick up. And also people maybe are not selling their project, but we've had a number of people who've gotten hired to join staffs of television shows and everybody's gained representation.
Does Imagine benefit financially from this incubator? I mean, do you take an equity stake in some of the projects? Okay.
Yeah.
But we have to bid like anybody else.
Right. Got it.
Okay.
Got it. I wanted to talk about, so as you're talking about expanding the voices and the sorts of stories being told, you two have moved into more dramatically into documentary filmmaking. I know you're up in Northern California working on a project now, Ron.
Right.
Talk to me about why you're funding more documentary films and docuseries, and how that aids in all of your storytelling.
Well, I mean, it's something that we've both always appreciated, and as I joked, but it wasn't a joke. I mean, Brian did sort of have to sneak around and make a documentary at one point. I remember him scrambling and apologizing to our partners and promising it wasn't really taking too much time. But it was a story that he was.
We had a deal with a television studio I did for quite a long time. We had great success there, but they said if you're devoting time to documentaries. And then they sent a subpoena to me. Rough guys. I mean.
So anyway, but slowly but surely over time, we got a little bit more involved. I finally directed one, which was about a festival that Jay-Z was running called Made in America. In fact, we screened it here.
Yes.
It was, and it's just been, immediately I found it was creatively stimulating, and I also personally just really enjoyed being around the people who dedicate themselves to documentaries. And then as we began looking for business opportunities, we began to see this was happening. The Beatles' 8 Days a Week project came to us through Nigel Sinclair. we got to know this guy, Justin Wilkes,
Yes.
at Radical Media, and had worked with him a number of times over the years, and we began to think, should we have a division? And you know, one thing led to another, and we wound up being able to bring Justin here. He brought Sarah Bernstein from HBO, and who knew how to... And the answer is, again, we've created this environment because we have an interest and we have a belief that it can be a business, and that there can also be a kind of a, project can cross-pollinate in important ways.
Right.
And so that's our leadership, and having some resources to help launch it. They've taken this to just another level in a very short period of time.
Way beyond what we could have done, because they have time, actually slightly more better expertise than we do at like just making them. In 1 year, they've generated 15 projects that are actively being made.
And that are really
amazing projects, really good. They have great taste. We're fortunate we're able to find these superstars, but we knew Justin for a while because we worked with him with Elon Musk on this Mars series. Right. I mean, he's willing to like lives on the location in Budapest for I don't know how long. Right. I just barely can make the call to Budapest.
But so this is what we're doing. You know, you talked about kids and family.
Right.
This is some. You know, these are all paths, kinds of stories, audiences we want to reach. Brian used to collect children's illustrated books, you know, I mean, but Universal never wanted us to make that a priority for us when we were doing movies for them. Now we can do that. You know, when we had our TV deal at Fox, they didn't want us doing children's programming. We lucked out and wound up being a part of the Curious George television program, and loved being a part of that.
We did the movie too.
Well, we did the movie, which led us into that. But so all this example of this very simple idea that we like a lot of different stories, and we like the people who tell them, and sometimes we're, you know, with our sleeves rolled up in the trench, or sometimes we're just providing the framework. And now we're gaining this team of executives who really are collaborators, who are making this stuff happen in a really dynamic way.
Speaking of collaboration, you two have been together for collaborating for 35 years. Do you mind? I mean, we've got about a minute and a half before I let you ask some questions. But how did you two? How did this collaboration begin? And how do relationships don't always span 3 decades? So how do you guys keep it going?
Well, I mean, I could say how we began. I created this discipline where I forced myself to meet a new person every day that was principally important in the media business. I mean, famous directors. I mean, anyone that was getting something done, principally getting something done, and so I happened to. Now I'm now on the Paramount lot. I'm ready to make TV shows, and I thought, I don't have someone today. I didn't think it's so. I quickly, because I have this discipline, it's like an exercise, like working out. I look out the window, I see Ron Howard. And Ron Howard is the star of Happy Days, and I'm thinking, that counts, you know? So I look out the window, I kind of yell at Ron Howard. I go, Ron, and he blows me off a little bit. but that was okay. And then I found a way. I called his office. I said, can we meet? And we met. And to make the long story short, we both shared the similar dream. We were both, he was doing what he was doing, but we both wanted to be mainstream movie people. I wanted to be a mainstream movie producer for making meaningful movies. He wanted to do the same thing as being a director. And we just sort of joined forces in that dream. And I had 2 projects. One was called Night Shift. It was an R-rated movie about 2 guys that ran a call girl ring out of the New York City morgue. Which was R-rated. The other one was called Splash, a romantic comedy about a man falling in love with a mermaid, which was my preference. But he said, no, I don't want to do the mermaid thing. I've been on Happy Days. I want to do the R-rated thing. And he did that really well, which gave us some credibility, Night Shift. And then we went on and he did Splash, which was very successful. And And we're in when you make two movies together, you're in a trench, and you have to create trust. You get to learn each other's taste.
I'm going to tell a story now.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell a story.
Okay.
So I'd directed for Roger Corman. Directing was a dream from the time I was a teen. You know, so the whole time I was on Happy Days, I was making short films, I was writing scripts, and I was making headway. I was also producing and directing TV movies, which I did every year, every off. So I was gaining a lot of experience, but not traction in the big dream, which was studio films. Of course, I was still under contract to Happy Days. I now recognize that they would probably look at that and say, well, he didn't even have time. Why would we consider him? But I didn't think that way because I felt I did have time. When I met Brian, I did feel a real connection, but he also had these ideas. He had good ideas. And we started going around having meetings, and not all the meetings were sales, but there was a chemistry and a sense that his experiences could benefit me, and I could grow from it, and my sort of experience behind the camera and in front of it could also lend credibility to this. And it is good to find partners. It really is important to find collaborators in this business. It's not a lone wolf business. It really isn't. And we found that and started having success with it. We didn't formalize it till we started Imagine, but even that was a shared dream, which was, what if we unified and were able to focus our creativity? And that worked. And in a funny way, that simple idea is still what's driving a different business model today with Imagine. And it remains exciting. It changes all the time, but it's yielding more and more creative opportunities, which is thrilling.
All right, I'll give you a chance to ask some questions.
Oh, I didn't tell my story. This is actually the story. So we're trying to do Night Shift. We're trying to get Night Shift going. We have a good script written by Gans and Mandel, a couple of people from Happy Days. We have a lot of credibility, but the studio will greenlight the movie if we could just get John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd to star in it. They were the hottest thing in the world. If you could just get the biggest superstars in comedy, then we'd make your movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so we, at one point, are in New York trying to cast. We find out that John will meet us. Dan seems to like the script, but we have to sell John. We jump in cabs. We race over. We hang out. We're supposed to only be a 10-minute meeting, but it's a 2-hour meeting, and it's fun. And he says he'll read it, but then he never reads it. So then we're going to Dan. Has he read it? I don't know. He hasn't read it. Now, he's doing reshoots. But now we have a small office. We're sharing an office with no assistant doing prep on the lot. But at least we have an office and a place to work. So we're sitting in this office. We find out they're on the lot doing reshoots for Neighbors. So Brian says, you got to go over there.
Gotta go, Ryan.
You got to go. Take the script, put it in his hands. Just put it in his hands. I said, oh my God, I got to crash the set? Yeah, you're on Howard. You can crash the set. So I take my little copy with the red cover that says Night Shift over, and I do crash the set. And I watch him shoot a little bit, and I see Dan, and Dan invites me in, and rock and roll guy Flea's in there too, and we're hanging around, and I say, and he says, oh man, I'm so sorry, I haven't had a chance to read it. I give it to him. It actually goes really, really well. He never did read it, and we went another way. But for that moment, I had actually done the thing. Now I'm walking back, but it took a long time. Right. So I walk back, and I'm just, I don't know, I became a little devious in my mind about this situation. And I saw Brian, and he's like in something like meditating or something, like in the corner, like thinking, as I opened the door. And he said, how'd it go? And I just couldn't help myself. I said, I had to hit him. He said, what? I said, look, it was kind of insulting. I handed him the script. He had hot coffee. He threw the hot coffee at me. What the fuck you doing this for? I ducked it. And what am I going to do? I had to punch him. And I thought he'd be furious or something, And here's what he does. He goes, I'm so sorry I put you in that position. he didn't go for the joke at all. He didn't take the bait in the way I expected him to. But that was also those, you know, you run through that gauntlet and those kind of battles, and it does begin to really forge, you know, a lasting friendship.
That's a good. I didn't even know all the details of that story. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, let's hear what you have to ask. Raise your hand, and someone with a microphone will find you. I hope. Right over here. And then we'll move toward the back.
Hey, sorry. I'm curious about Imagine Kids and what your incentives are. I'm a filmmaker that works in family programming and is interested in elevating it and making smart things for kids and things that feel like they're, you know, creator driven. And I was wondering if that's the incentive of Imagine and what you guys are trying to do with that.
Let me just say two things, and you answer. One is, all of our companies, you know, they're a variety of types of taste we all have, but we try to share the same value system. All the people that work, and basically, we don't have to have happy endings in every movie, but optimally, we want to send out good vibes in the world. So we don't actually make horror films. Well, because it's slightly antithetical to what it is. But so family films are kind of naturally fall into that category. We got very lucky. We hired this woman named Stephanie Sperber. She's relevant because she was a single, you know, she's a woman, one person that gets hired by Universal 21 years ago, and she created their entire consumer brand company. That brought in Minions and everything else. And oddly enough, we knew her because we met her on How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and she created this insane campaign that was so spectacular. So we have this great person that we were able to get that started this business 21 years ago. So she's kind of perfect for us.
She has great taste, she has heart, and we have shared sensibility. But again, the other thing is
we got the tiny chef.
Yeah, we got tiny chef. But the other thing is that everybody in the company is contributing to all of this. I mean, there is now this running conversation. Hey, here's a great book. My kids love this one. You know, Karen Lunder will call. Justin Wilkes will call. You know, there are these. So she's getting a lot of help, and it turns out that she herself is a real dynamo with great instincts. You know, like every time she comes up with a project, I go to my kids. And they say, yeah, because we now have 5 grandkids. Our kids love that one. So I might not know everything at all about it, but she's finding those ones that are those hot buttons. Like this one I love that's live action for a TV show, Briar Hollow, which is using the Briar horses, and it's this live action story of these relationships between you know, these young riders and their horses around this stable. That's a really great idea. Tiny Chef's great. Space Kids is great. There are a lot of terrific ideas that are in both animation and live action. But they're all character-based, and they're all built around these ideas. And again, it's about us collecting the idea, developing the argument, building the case for it, and finding great homes for it.
Over here, we have a question. Stand up.
So I went through one of those tech accelerators you spoke of, but I haven't heard of many media accelerators. Do you expect to see a lot of the larger studios bringing those in-house and creating their own accelerators the same way a lot of these companies have created tech accelerators in-house? And if so, how do you think that will affect the industry?
Well, I'm not sure they'll try. They have already tried. Many studios and a tech company did do that. But it's a kind of thing that creativity, those ingredients and the way it works, it kind of works better in a smaller environment. And we thought it was kind of perfect for us because we've had 35 years of trial and error. We've had great successes, but we've also had failure, and we've learned a lot from our failure, and we've been able to codify some of our highs and lows in life over the 35 years and codify it in a way that it's an informational system. It's part of our application. And so it's going to be a lot different than what a tech company does.
Or what a studio would do, or a network.
Companies will use our system, but I don't know if they're really designed to create one.
We have a question over here.
Hi. Hi.
You're on.
My name is Harsha. I'm a director from India. I direct TV commercials, and I'm and now I'm trying to make my feature. What I wanted to check was, in my experience with shooting films, I've always felt personal intent in the interaction is a very, very important motivator to decide who you want to partner with. Unfortunately, the entire system of writing, sending out synopsises and scripts never really carry that with that intensity. So have you also looked at that? And if you do you also look at personal pitches? And I'm just trying to crash this conference just the way you did a few years ago.
Well, one of the real values of Impact, I think, is this 8-week period of time where these creatives, they really get to know each other, and they also get to know these shapers who are around them, and to some extent, they even get to meet and interface with some of our guest speakers and with us, and some of our executives from Imagine. And so I think that a sort of a secondary value really are the relationships that they're beginning to build, because you're right. And I think it does boil down to people finding that other soul, that other individual who can support, push, share the weight of actually getting something done. No matter how great the project is, it still has to navigate the system, so I think that's a value that we gain at Impact. As far as us hearing pitches, we go through the agents for what happens at Imagine through the traditional agencies. Impact is its own program.
We have one last question over here. Maybe two. We'll see.
Okay, sure. We'll answer fast.
Sorry, you pretty much asked the question I was going to ask: how to crash with my script into your lap. And I wouldn't throw coffee or punch you. So I guess it's just you have to go through your,
Right.
I have something I've been shooting for 10 years in South Africa, and it's a comparison of kids here and kids there. And it's a documentary thing.
Yeah, so we're not going to hear a pitch, but I appreciate your
my effort.
Okay, so the only thing I would say is we do have Karen Lunder, who's head of the movies, is here. She'll be here for 3 days. Justin Wilkes is here, and so is Sarah. Maybe you find one of them.
Yep. So we've got someone over here with a question.
Hi, I love your work, both of you.
Thank you.
Now this is about story is king. Now, if you come up and you find someone who's got a good story, now, to me, film is also a product. So how would you then take a good story, just slightly the quick fast track process of understanding that it's also a product? So how do you creatively meet the genre and actually try to see that it's going to meet some audience expectations? Right. To, is there a process, or do you actually do that development?
Well, we do that development, and that's largely what Impact does, is it fields those kinds of ideas and then puts them in an environment where that shaping can actually begin. But the other thing that I would say is just being here at this conference, these are the kinds of conversations that you need to be having. If you can tell your idea, and with people who you trust and share it, that's how the shaping begins. And that's how we all do it. Is we have a friend who's close enough to say, yeah, but that's kind of a flat ending, or yeah, but I don't know who would ever want to see that. People have to be willing to be frank with you. There's a great nugget of truth there and something really entertaining, and you need to be able to be open enough to hear the but, and build on that and answer those questions, and as Brian said earlier, build the case for the project.
All right. Thank you both for your time. This has been a great
pleasure.
conversation.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
What can I say? Hello. Hi. What can I say? What a fantastic start, right? Is everyone just invigorated, ready? Incredible. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. But stay tuned. We have the heads of the new heads of film festivals in our next panel: Cameron Bailey, Mariette Rissenbeek from Berlin, Kim Yutani from Sundance, and Paolo Moretti from Cannes. So please stay tuned. Thank you.